Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a revealing exchange between Senator Josh Hawley and Emil Bove, President Trump's nominee to the Third Circuit. This was more than a confirmation hearing, it was where pro-life principles met sharp judicial philosophy. Stay tuned, this could shape the future of constitutional law in America.
Mr. Bove, nice to see you. I enjoyed our conversation the other day. Congratulations on your nomination. If I could, let's turn the focus of the discussion back to the law. I want to talk to you for just a second about your approach to the interpretation of statutes, which is something that we discussed when you and I had a chance to speak earlier. When you encounter, as you will constantly on the Third Circuit, when you encounter an ambiguous statute, what's your general approach? What do you consult? What's your approach to interpreting the text? Give us a sense of how you'll tackle this, what will be a daily occurrence, should you be confirmed.
When I asked Mr. Bove how he interprets ambiguous statutes, he was clear. Start with the text, stick with the text, and don't legislate from the bench. He used the word textualist again and again. Bove rejects the idea that statutes' meanings evolve with political winds. That's a major statement in today's legal culture.
So in the face of an ambiguity, Senator, I would consult the context of the operative phrase, consider the statutory structure, look at usages of similar terms by the operative legislature at the time in question, because I think that matters, as I said earlier, with respect to enforcing bicameralism and presentment, and try to garner as much as can be from those sources, those textual indications. In the event that I think that those textual considerations don't resolve the matter, philosophically, I would be inclined to exercise restraint and not insert myself or a panel of the Third Circuit, if I was confirmed, into a position of declaring what the meaning of an ambiguity is, as opposed to deferring back to the legislature on that topic.
Mr. Bove made it clear. His allegiance is to Article 3 and its limits. He sees his job as interpreting law, not rewriting it. He believes the original public meaning of the law matters, not today's politics. If you care about who's making decisions on our courts, hit that subscribe button.
Yes, good. Let's talk about substantive due process for just a moment. What's your understanding of that doctrine?
I think there's a basic test set forth in Supreme Court precedent that I would apply faithfully, if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed, that seeks to identify certain fundamental rights as a matter of substantive due process. That precedent, the precedent for that test, as I understand it, basically requires consideration of whether the right at issue is implicit in the concept of ordered liberty and also consistent with deep history and traditions of the Republic. There's a lot of academic writing about the merits of that test that I think for judges, particularly me, if I'm confirmed, is sort of beside the point. Because on the Third Circuit, I'd be bound by Supreme Court precedent, like the Glucksberg case, to apply that test in the context of arguments presented to me by the party.
We moved into the critical issue of substantive due process and the legacy of Dobbs. He pointed to the Glucksberg test. Rights must be rooted in the nation's history and traditions. But Dobbs is now the controlling law, and he confirmed he'll apply it faithfully. If confirmed, Bove won't look for ways around Dobbs. He'll uphold it as binding precedent.
You've been describing the fundamental rights branch. The court has used different tests over the years, frankly, to describe what counts as a fundamental right. Those tests are quite divergent, if we're being honest. But this court seems to have settled on one recently, and I think you just put your finger on the decision that most recently draws these themes together, these strands together. That's the Dobbs decision. Do you regard the Dobbs decision as settled law?
Yes.
As controlling law?
That is what I mean, is that it's a binding precedent of the Supreme Court that I would be required to apply faithfully if I'm confirmed.
And so you will apply the Dobbs decision not only in the context of life and abortion, which is the immediate context, but also for its instruction on the meaning of fundamental liberties under the substantive due process head. Is that correct? Is that fair to say?
I think it's fair to say that a judge endeavoring to be bound by the rule of law, which is certainly what I would be trying to do, applies all relevant Supreme Court precedents in a faithful way. And that would be my mission for life if I am confirmed.
This is where it gets powerful. I asked Bove directly, will you apply Dobbs without hesitation? Yes, he answered. No dodging, no ambiguity. That matters. With Bove, we got a clear-eyed commitment to interpreting the Constitution as written and respecting life under the rule of law. And he respects the people's role in making policy decisions. Here's the bottom line. Trump's nominee Emil Bove gave conservatives something to cheer for: clear commitments, a firm stance on Dobbs, and a rejection of activist judging. Subscribe and share. There's more to unpack as nominations continue. Thanks for watching.